talk about, Heidi's asking if we can talk about a construction company reviewing for a project to bid. Specifically, do they read through all the specs or read the CD drawings or both, or rely on the meeting information? Yeah, good question. So, of course, I'm sharing based on my experience. So, I guess, of course, that's a caveat for the whole thing. But uh, with regard to the question Heidi's asking is like the receiving end of, there's another individual, he's not on the call, doesn't look like at the moment tonight, but that I mentor and he reaches out occasionally and answer questions with. And this is a big question on the other end of receiving, as the contractor, that he happens to be sitting as a contractor as well, and is having similar questions about what do I look at first, because they want to do it right. But more specifically, I'm the contractor and I'm looking for work. Maybe. So let's just start with that. The level of interest very well could be if the contractor is busy. If the contractor's resources, and we say resources means lots of things, material resources, equipment resources, certainly manpower resources, upcoming commitments. I mean, there's a laundry list of reasons why they may or may not have availability to bid, which is why, like I said, in this bid environment, it's common a construction manager or various design build or similar methods are kind of popular, and whether they're winning out or not, I guess we'll know maybe in the longer term, because I'm not sure exactly they're working exactly as we hoped in every case, or otherwise they're just hard to figure out how to do very well. But the construction managers help to, with their vetted vendors, help increase and bid participation. So the owner teams as well have to spend time actually engaging with contractors and letting them know, stirring up a meeting about the bidding coming up. And so sometimes owners as well, maybe even not necessarily by choice, but by requirements through whichever entity that they may be sourcing funding through, or maybe having commissioning requirement, they may require a pre-bid walkthrough. So that those contractors are paying more attention. Those owners are kind of hoping to do that by making this requirement. So we know at least we had somebody walk through and can say if at time there's bidding, there's anything that's ambiguous, because there's going to be plenty, especially in a huge project. The bigger the project, you're getting hundreds of millions. There's so much room because things are moving so fast that for ambiguity, that the comfort level needs to be there. So by having a pre-bid meeting walkthrough, you know, at least you had somebody show up, you had somebody give representation. So this is a common thing. So that really helps. But the activity, supposing that they're going to bid, which the level of interest of bid could be different too. And it may be to their advantage once they understand in the market others are or aren't bidding, right? There's this, but once they are going to make effort at this, they usually have in-house estimators that are working with their vendors that they normally buy things from. And they certainly need to be vendors that are within the specification allowed to be as suppliers or as manufacturers. So they have to work within these constraints as well. And that's how they're securing confidence when they bid, because they are giving, which is a great note about how during bidding, these bidding environments can be very fast and quick. And so I'll just, when it's bidding, I'll just change it. And after, oh, too bad, we'll get it then. the amount of time, just think about the emails that we exchange amongst our normal activities for work. You send an email and you know upon sending it, it's not that you're going to get the answer back in 5 minutes. It might be, it's not a chat, right? You send an email, it could take a few days. So then there's holidays, and before you know it, it's like, so the bid event can, so if you're a contractor, so now we were saying you're just, are you going to be interested or not? So now you're a contractor and you're like, okay, I'm going to bid this, and maybe you're looking, and then if there are a bunch of changes that happen during you getting these updated documents, like, wait a minute, I just talked to my vendor and there's no way they're going to get me this back then. So then it comes time for bids are due. They may decide not to bid at all. And then, but with the respect of how much are they paying attention to what they're receiving, it can depend. So if it's a significant owner, team, they, the contractor team might have expertise in all facets, or they might not, for instance, have any MEP. Mostly they're general contractor based, so they have more understanding of the steel and the concrete and this kind of, not that they don't understand the other systems, of course they do, but the level of confidence that they would be the one responsible for the number that happens when they put that in for bid for that area, they may have a partner that they reach out to and ask. But so if there's a lot of individuals working with them in their group, they might be able to do a good job at this. But potentially at the lowest level, what happens is somebody wants to bid and they just pass something to the vendor. Give me a number on this. Because they're going to be also, depending on the confidences of the other aspects of the project that they're looking at, which, if like we're showing, you orchestrate legible documents, they might have great confidence, or they might feel on um, yeah, so that they may bid, they may not bid, but they may just pass to the vendor one thing, and not all the things they should have passed to the vendor too. So the vendor may give them a bad number. And so it's this idea that then later maybe they won the bid and now they need to make up some money, maybe. I mean, I'm sounding like there's a video game for the contractor. Clearly, I have highest degrees of confidence, and we should have highest degrees of confidence in our contracting partners. It becomes very easy in this industry, and I don't know, maybe that's broad, maybe just it's very easy to us versus them. So if we help them, they'll help us by making a good installation and doing as we have there. So yeah, so I think the meeting information would be like the pre-bid meeting. And did that help, Heidi? Do you think that answered your question, or are there other follow-up?
No, I think I get it better. It's just, okay. I'm just curious what they're looking at. Like, because a lot of the, like, if you start reading specs, like for, let's say, panel boards, I mean, it's not like the engineers sit down and write all this stuff from scratch. There's a lot of copy and paste, and like a lot of it is just pretty standard. So I'm curious how much they really peruse through the specifications, or if they just kind of have this expectation and then don't really review it in detail until they get the project.
Seems reasonable, right? So what we're discussing is a level of risk. So the contractor's done several of maybe projects by maybe larger engineering firms, and they understand what the typical specifications are that are being used and what options. And it can be, and you're right that the specs can feel very combed over, or otherwise just kind of like blurred eyes because it seems the same. And I think maybe when you're working in buildings that the level of care required by the engineers that are doing the work is consistently the same, they are always using the same spec. And it doesn't matter if it's a K-12 school or a industrial lab or a standard office building, they just, same thing, but it's an instrument of service. So it depends on how much time they had to really do that, I guess. I mean, all the things that go into it of actually putting together a complicated thing. it's different if somebody said, I want this VFD for a dynamometer in an industrial test cell that is something that's unique, and when it gets turned on needs to work, like distances of where VFD is to motor start to make a difference. Common mode noise and cable selections and cable arrangements starts to be not something you want to glaze over. So
Right.
usually the confidence level of the PE needing to stamp this is, well, it needs to be, according to, they shouldn't be stamping things that they aren't, but is boasted more because certainly there's professional continuing education for most states. So we can't know everything, which is why it's great that you guys are spending a very small amount of time in regard. I said last night that talking is like bypasses evolution pretty quickly. So yeah, so you can't make perfect projects for clients either. So there is learning, especially when you're designing buildings that have never been designed before for applications that are new. And so those tend to be ones that there's a lot more scrutiny happening versus we've done this cookie cutter building lots of times, and mostly everybody just says or feels we want to make sure this it's good, make sure it's a good office building. You know what that means. And just the common person walking around might be like, oh, this doesn't look like a good office building. Like, what's all this stuff? Why is there just a bunch of wire mold on the wall? Or I don't know. I'm spiraling here, but okay, yeah, thank you, Heidi. That was
Okay,
really great
thank you.
for the concept of what we were talking about.